All right, Hopper.
All right, Frog.
Grab a seat.
Come on, let's be real here. We'll keep this in. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's cowboy time.
It hit. I didn't know it would record the intro too. What a seminal episode of Chasing Billy. We have the esteemed, infamous Bob Boze Bell joining us. Bob, I've talked to you since about 2021 or so, but it's good to see you face to face. This is our first video chat. And gosh, anybody who touches the world of Billy the Kid or the Wild West comes into contact with one of a number of your contributions. But for folks who may not know, do you want to give a brief intro to who you are and what you do and all that?
Well, I grew up in Kingman, Arizona, a rough tourist town. My dad had a gas station on Route 66, and I iced jugs in the summer of 1957 and saved up from the tips $11 to buy the biographical album of Western gunfighters by Ed Bartholomew. And so my friends were buying bikes and all kinds of stuff with their summer savings from working, and I bought a book, and that kind of cast the die, I guess, for me. And then the other thing is that every summer we would go to Iowa to my father was a Norwegian, grew up on a farm, and got drafted in World War II. I was stationed in Kingman with 10,000 GIs with 500 available women in Kingman, and my mother chose him. And so every summer we would go to Iowa, and I remember going through New Mexico, and it was Billy the Kid's grave, and I wanted to stop. My dad would never stop. I got him to stop one time on the way home. I was about 1959, and I went into the Longhorn Museum on Route 66, about 48 miles east of Albuquerque, and I bought a photograph, allegedly, of Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett. I paid $0.25, and I just loved it. And I got home, and then I discovered on the pages of True West that the photograph was a fake and had been taken at a rodeo parade in 1935. And so I just got so angry. I go, what? Well, who was he really? I really wanted to know. And to fast forward, I think it's more than a little ironic that the only known photograph of Billy the Kid, which sold for $1.2 million, probably cost Billy the Kid $0.25. I'll stop there.
Oh, give me land, lots of land, under starry skies above. Don't fence me in.
Some of the fake stuff is iconic. Some of it is a treasure. And that's just so bizarre to me, because kind of our goal when we all get into this game is like, get rid of that fake stuff, get rid of that, just destroy it, eradicate it from the universe. And then to have that photo in my studio, and I look at it every day and just kind of smile.
Absolutely. And that's something I feel very deeply about too, because you go on this journey and it all becomes part of your grand adventure, and you love all of it. And that's often, I know there are a lot of folks out there who are like, get rid of all the non-true stuff. They're very dogmatic, but at the same time, that's my approach to folks like Brushy Bill and things like that, because regardless of true or not, they've become part of the legend, and they're part of the reason why we're here. And I love them all to death, and you said you grew up in Kingman and that you got that book from a True West magazine. And for folks who don't know, this book here is just a fantastic intro to Billy the Kid, and it's one of the first books I ever bought. You come to a point where now you're the owner of True West, that you have acquired the true. Like, how did that feel, acquiring something that was so influential in your life before you'd even known that would become, your baby, so to speak?
When I was 9, 10, 11, 12, the Old West was just, it hung the moon for me. I just loved it. Okay. Then the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan, and I got in a rock band, and I kind of put that behind me. I hate to say this is embarrassing, and as a kind of a juvenile thing that I was into. And then I got into rock and roll, and I would see True West on the newsstand, and it was still being printed on pulp. And I remember thinking more than once, I could do something with that magazine. And I thought, and then it would go away. And then in 1999, we heard rumors. Myself and Bob McCubbin, legendary Bob McCubbin from El Paso, Texas, we both heard rumors that True West was going down and was for sale. And long story short, we flew to Tulsa and rented a car and drove to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and paid way too much for a dying magazine and moved it to Arizona. And it was a really rough ride. I've never done anything as tough as that. But he didn't want to change the magazine. He was a charter subscriber. He subscribed to True West when he was 12 years old in 1952. Okay. The one thing I fought Bob McCubbin on was we have to go to slick paper because we're the last pulp standing. Pulp was a big deal in the 1950s, with True Confessions and all those magazines. And we were the last one. I knew we had to at least do that. And of course, as soon as I did that, our print bill doubled, and we started losing $30,000 a month. And
I can't even think about that.
Oh man! And I'm telling you, it's Pucker City. And my mother calls me right in the middle of this nightmare, and she says she lived in Cody, Wyoming, and she goes, "How's it going, Robert?" And I go, "Mom, we're losing $30,000 a month." And she goes, "Oh my, you could buy a house with $30,000." I go, "A month, Mom." She couldn't get her head around it, and I couldn't either. How we turned that boat is just it's a crazy story for sure.
Quite a turnaround. It's still going great. Last issue, of course, was chock full of Billy the Kid goodness. Great articles by James Mills.
Okay.
And you had a couple in there, didn't you? One on Brushy, didn't you?
Yes, we reprinted a piece on Brushy, and it's interesting that you brought him up because I really disliked that guy and everybody who liked him. I considered them idiots and fools. When I was your age, that's this young brigand. We're going to eradicate that. And now, as you so aptly put it, it's all part and parcel to this big package of life. And did you know that John Fusco and Emilio Estevez are trying to do Young Guns 3, and which is predicated based on Brushy Bill living? The kid didn't die, and so they're going to have in the story, as I heard it, is they're going to have Billy the Kid, who's now 51, and we're in 1915, and he's taking a young brigand under his wing in the Tunstall role. And it's Pancho Villa. And so That's just cool. I love it. And now this opens up the door to the fact that, well, if you go with the Brushy Bill story, he died in 1950. Okay. So there's Young Guns 4 and he's at Normandy Beach. It's like you can take Billy the Kid all the way to France.
Écartera une fuite et votre transmission s'écroule.
I think you had a blog recently on your Bob Boze Bell's diary website where you talked about the green hat band thing, and there was a recent fracas or whatever on the internet about whether Billy really had a hat with a green headband, and that kind of brought up a question in my head of like, we both love the history, and there are thousands, millions of us that love the history and we love the legend, and I'm an aspiring fiction writer. I would like to write a Billy novel someday. Whether I do or not, I don't know. You're an artist, a storyteller. You've got tons of books under your belt. We both love the legend. We both love the history. How do you value both of those? And how do you respect both of those? And still, there's so many people who approach it dogmatically and want to get caught up in that. No, there was no green hat band, so we can't ever talk about it. But like you've got tons of great images of Billy with a sugar loaf with a green hat, and those are legendary and beautiful and part of the Billy narrative. It's okay if he didn't wear that hat. How do we celebrate the legend and still be okay with wanting the history. How have you navigated that throughout your life of being okay with, you know what, it's okay if he didn't have a green hat man, but it's still part of the legend. How do you keep those two separate and equal, you know?
Well, that's the eternal question. How do you keep those
Yeah.
separate, equal? And the Cliff Notes version is it's very, very difficult, and try to balance the two. And they're never going to match. But I like to say that the reason that Billy the Kid is so resonates so much is because A, he's a cold-blooded killer, and B, he's the all-American boy, and those don't go together.
Yes.
But just like with a car battery, you got a positive and a negative, and they don't do anything, but you put them together and they create this spark, and that's what you have is you have this, Ken Burns said recently, we have to embrace contradiction and undertow. Isn't that a great line? And the other thing is, and I don't like to admit this, but and I'll just own it for me, is that I was at a shooting event, a single action shooting where a guy dresses up like Old West characters, and they ride horses and shoot balloons and all this kind of stuff. And so it's like a full immersion, cosplay of the Old West. And I don't know why, but I was just looking at them, and all of a sudden it just dawned on me, we're all scared little boys.
Yeah.
That's what resonated with me, because I had bullies, I wasn't big, and Billy the Kid shot them, so that's very appealing to somebody who's 12 years old. And that's true of all of them. Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp, those guys had sand, I was just, we're doing another feature on the gunfight at OK Corral, so-called. And it's and I wanted to do 30 shots, 30 seconds. And I want to do every scene, and that they're standing there and these guys are going to kill you, and they're 4 feet away, and they went right up in their grill. And I love Wyatt Earp's line is, "You sons of bitches have been looking for a fight, and now you can have it." That is one of the coolest lines in the West. And I think that encapsulates my infatuation with the Kid. He was so young, dealing with killers and men twice his size, and he just said, "Bring it on." And to me, that's eternal.
That's like one of the my favorite quotes attributed to the Kid when he walks out into the street in Lincoln and says, "Turn loose, you sons of bitches. We'll give you a game."
That's it. That's the same line as Wyatt Earp's line, and to have that kind of sand is that courage. I think that's the attraction. And I've noticed recently, I don't know if you've noticed this, but we ran that cover story on Buckeye Blake doing a shrine on Billy the Kid, the traveling wake, and I was kind of shocked by the blowback from people online saying, "Well, why don't you give one to Charlie Manson?" They see him as a cretin, as a criminal. They're appalled, and that seems larger maybe than it was when we were younger. When I was younger, that seems significant. There seems to be a how can you defend this? This is horrible. This isn't what America was about. So we got that going for us.
Yeah. It's circling back because that's how it was right after Billy got killed. He was
right.
akin to Charlie Manson. That was kind of the level that the papers put him at. I think, I've thought about that issue too. And I think as we get more into today's world, we see law enforcement as something, we impose our vision of law enforcement onto that world that Billy lived in. And so it's easy to see Billy as a cop killer, as an outlaw. And we just don't understand how flimsy law enforcement was in those days, how you could be a rustler one day and the next day a deputy and the next day robbing a bank, and so that, I think that plays into it a lot, that Billy killed 2 cops escaping from Lincoln jail and everything. And they just don't understand, Ollinger and Bell They weren't, law enforcement officers, so to speak. It was different then.
Well, you've hit on a really potent aspect of this. And I remember when the pardon for Billy the Kid was really strong, and Bill Richardson was the governor of New Mexico, and there was this big movement, and he had to take the position, or his staff did. I can't remember exactly how this came down, but he said, we cannot give a pardon to a cop killer. And that's so jarring because you don't think of Ollinger and J.W. Bell, no relation, as cops. You don't think about that. But when you jarringly put that into a modern situation, dynamic, then you're like, well, okay, that's true. We don't want to do that. And but that's just been true all the way down the pike. One of the fascinating things about the Wyatt Earp story is, he couldn't sell a story. He lived in the 1920s, and he was friends with Tom Mix and William S. Hart, and he was living in L.A. and he'd go to Musso and Frank's and have lunch with Tom Mix. It's just real. And he goes, well, I want to cash in. The guy was a boomer, boomer as in go to boom towns. And he wanted to cash in, and he never could cash in. And now he's going to cash in and sell a story. And he couldn't sell it. And it was only Walter Noble Burns got to him. And so did Stuart Lake. And I love Stuart Lake's line about he found this 80-year-old man who answered with 3 responses. One was, yep. Nope. Don't recall. and then he dies, so you can put any words he want in his mouth. But anyway, what had to happen was the speaking of cop killers, is that crime, roaring 20s crime became, public enemy number 1 in the movies. And so the Hays Code comes into Hollywood and says, you got to stop making these gangster movies. You're ruining the youth of America. You've got to stop, or we'll make you stop. And so then somebody took the Wyatt Earp story, which is basically it's a Roaring 20s story. It's more it's more crime than it is cowboy. But then so Hollywood put that in a movie with Law and Order, and now you get 40 movies on Wyatt Earp. So I think that's fascinating as we move as a culture, that this goes in, this goes out, and then this comes back in. And I'll tell you, if you live long enough, you realize that the people are going to be famous from our era are not who we think it is. You know what I mean? We have this pecking order of, well, Brad Pitt's over here, and but 50 years from now, people are going to be celebrating something that. Well, I love this quote: "History is a cruel trick played on the dead by the living." That says it all.
In Billy's day, people had their money on Pat. Pat was the hero of the hour.
Yeah. No, and he, the fact that they were friends. Here's another quote I love, which is, there's a fine line between catching an outlaw and becoming one. And that's the Pat Garrett story. I mean, he was gambling with Billy. They were on that side, like that. But now you got to give Garrett credit, because he allegedly, I've got to say this because I don't know about the green hat man. I'm going to step in it, but allegedly, Pat Garrett went to the boys. John Chisholm said, "I'm going to promote you as the next sheriff, and I want you to clean out that squad east of Sumner." That was his launching order. He was basically hiring a killer to go get him, and it didn't hurt that he knew them. But I believe it's true that Garrett went to Charlie Beaudry and all the guys and said, "Hey, we've been friends, but I just want you to know, when I put this badge on, I'm coming for you, and I'm not going to feel bad about killing you." That's my read on it. Yeah.
Well, I think there is a recollection in the Federal Writers Project, Library of Congress recollections thing, where somebody has an old timer tells the tale that Pat visited Billy, or Billy visited Pat's ranch, and Pat said, I'm going to become sheriff, and I'm going to do what I have to do, and I'm going to kill you. And Billy laughed and said, "Well, you'll try." Yeah.
And I think that's I admire the contradiction. You have to accept the contradiction. These stories are messy. All human stories are messy,
yes.
It's one of the messiest ones. And I think that gives it its longevity, is that there is only one photo.
But I'm in the minority. We were talking about Pat Garrett, that I know I get a lot of flack for this, but I see him as a tragic hero and
Oh,
a very tragic hero.
I
And
do.
I'm not part of the crowd. Every time you bring up Pat Garrett, you're going to get a lot of people who are like, Pat was a coward, shooting in the dark, horrible person, got what he deserved. I don't feel any of that about Pat. I feel
Yeah,
very sad about Pat.
yeah, I do. I think, and I think, well, you and I, first of all, we're from the same part of that tribe, which is, I don't. Maybe at some point I thought he was the villain, but I don't see that anymore. And one of the cool things about Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, the movie, Sam Peckinpah wanted to make a movie about a lawman who didn't want to arrest the man he had to kill. And there, once again, there's the contradiction. That's what gives that story such an electric charge. And I'm with you. I do not hate Pat Garrett. I feel bad for him. I think he's a tragic character. He said as much late in life. He said, I wish the kid would have killed me. He felt cursed by all that idolatry and all that ridiculousness.
That's one of my favorite quotes as well. I wish the kid had got his working on me that night. You could tell he felt that
Yeah.
heavy the rest of his life.
Correct.
Always the guy that killed Billy the Kid, whatever else he wanted to be.
Yeah, it became a curse.
Tell us what you've got coming up. Tell us what you've got going on. The Buckeye Blake thing. You've got Doc Hollidays coming up. Where will you be in the upcoming future?
I just got off the phone with Stuart Rosebrook, who's the director up at Charlotte Hall, and he's an editor at large at True West. And we just had a big Doc Hollidays event in Prescott, put on by Brad Courtney. And
that already happened.
That happened last Saturday.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I thought it was coming up.
No, last Saturday. But we're doing a big Doc Holliday art show with myself and Tom Ross, the artist from Lamy, New Mexico. And then Tom Ross and I and Buckeye Blake are doing an art show at the Scottsdale Museum of the West on October 3rd. That is going to be the show. I have 10 pieces in there, including the big bronze of Billy the Kid that I had done up in Prescott. And Buckeye Blake's coming in with the actual sculpture of him lying in repose. And there's going to be a funeral sign-in. You can look at the thing. There will be LED candles around it, and you'll be able to sign the directory. And the show will be up till December 31st. And that is just a huge event in my life because it's the culmination of all my work, and to be with these guys, Tom Ross and Buckeye Blake, and we're John Fusco is coming in to talk about the creation of Young Guns and how he's working on Young Guns 3. This is going to be a seminal event.
It sounds like I need to get there, man. That sounds awesome.
You need to get your butt there, James.
Pierre will hook up with me and we'll take another road trip out that way.
Yeah, good.
Oh, it's a gorgeous day.
Yep, certainly is.
Yep, terrific day for a drive.
Yeah, it's beautiful country out here.
A frog and a bear seeing America.
Moving right along in search of good times and good news. With good friends you can't lose.
This could become a habit.
Opportunity knocks once, let's reach out and grab it.
Yeah.
Together we'll nab it.
We'll hitchhike, bus, or yellow cabin.
Now, I do have one question I want to ask you, and that's, working with Chasing Billy and the coalition and all we're doing to preserve and keep this alive for more generations. Asking someone like you who's been in the business, who's done this and who's gone through everything there is to go through, what would your advice be to future generations and to folks who are in it now and just getting involved? Do you have any pointers or advice for us to keep handy?
Well, I go back to I got this great piece of advice. You need three things to be happy, okay? Something to do, someone to love, something to hope for, okay? And I get up every day and I get to come out to this studio where I'm surrounded by all the things that I love, and I work on this, and most of it fails, okay? I love this line from Winston Churchill. He said, "Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm."
That's so true.
And
Yeah.
it's just, and at the end of the day, really, it's the relationships that you have with your fellow members in the coalition. You know, I used to go to Lincoln. I would get off the radio. I did a radio show in Phoenix, in Scottsdale, and I would get off the air at 9:00 and drive to Lincoln. That is a 10-hour drive. I would drive it. I would stop at the Al Bar Cafe in San Antonio for a green chili burger, and then I would tear to Lincoln.
Wow.
55 people, and everybody in that town hated each other, and I just loved that. It probably still is the most contentious town village in the entire world, and I just loved that. And Fred Nolan would come shooting in there, and he was no
Wow.
straight violet. And so, and Leon Metz was there. You know what Leon Metz said about our world? What people choose to believe is a fact in itself. And that comes all the way back around to Brushy Bill, all the way back around to all the BS, all the things. It's all, if enough people believe, it's true to them. Okay.
Yes.
Now, my advice to you is cherish those relationships. I knew Leon Metz. I've laughed my butt off with Fred Nolan. That guy, you know, I did a talk at the Lincoln Cowboy Symposium in Ruidoso, New Mexico. And I went there, this is like 12 years ago. And I'm there, and they have me speaking, you'll appreciate this, in a little tent on the infield of the track, of the racetrack. Okay, so I go in there, and I'm going, you couldn't get 35 people in here. It's this little tent. And so I'm standing there, waiting, you know, what am I going to say? Well, I've done this 100 times. I'll get through it. And in comes Fred Nolan with his wife, Heidi, and he sits in the first row right in front of me. So
Yeah.
I go into my Billy the Kid scheme, you know. So then Billy the Kid, and people said and I keep looking down at him, and he would go, mm-hmm, or no. And so I finally threw up my hands and I said, damn it, everybody. We have one of the foremost experts on Billy the Kid sitting here right now, and I feel like a fool talking to him. Let's bring him up. So Fred comes up on stage, and we did something that ended up between Laurel and Hardy and Dave Chappelle meets Jerry Seinfeld. It was somewhere in that vortex.
Oh my God.
And we got done, and people were just, their jaws were on the floor, because I would say something, and then he would, you know, he's an old entertainer. He was an old entertainer, and he can play the piano and like that. And we just killed on that stage. That to me, if you take out everything else, take everything away from me, that one memory was worth the whole trip.
I think we should end on that. That's a good vibe to end the talk. That was really good. Bob, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate you taking the time. And hopefully we'll work more with each other and do more of these. And anything I can do to help you out, man, I'm happy to. And keep in touch.
I love that about you. And just remember, if we don't support each other, who will?
Amen. Absolutely.
Let's put this show out of its misery.
I love tonight's show.
Really?
Of course not. Just wanted to see if I could say it.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
A damn dog.